everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Marnie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the weirdest case. I would love to know you guys' opinions on this at the end because I don't really know what the person was aiming for. I don't know what they thought the end result was gonna be. That might sound a bit cryptic right now, but once we go through the whole video and I tell you what's going on, that will make more sense, and I'm sure you'll be just as confused as I am. So let's get straight into it. Today I'm going to be talking about the case of Jennifer Pan. Just a little bit of a rundown, some sort of background on Jennifer. Jennifer is a Canadian citizen. She comes from sort of Chinese, Vietnamese ancestry. Her parents were immigrants to Canada and they both came over as different types of refugees. Jennifer also had a brother called Felix, who was just a little bit younger than her. Her parents were generally described as hard-working people. They worked consistently for their money and to ensure that their children had the wonderful opportunities that they felt that they didn't have growing up in their home countries. From early on, Jennifer's parents set really high expectations for their children. According to Jennifer's high school friend Karen, Jennifer's father, Han, was seen as the classic tiger dad. So if you guys don't know what a tiger dad is, it's usually, I believe, I might be wrong, I actually haven't googled this, maybe I should google this. I believe it's sort of with Asian parent, they're really pushy for their kids to do really well. They tend to get them tutors, they make them study loads, and they're just kind of really strict about what they're doing when they're younger. Want you to be really successful kind of thing is what I believe. Maybe I should actually google that. Okay, tiger parenting is a form of strict or demanding parenting. They push and pressure their children to attain high levels of academic achievement or success in high-status extracurricular activities such as music, and they use authoritarian parenting methods to do this. The term is usually used by Asian Americans to describe their immigrant mum or dads who are highly involved, motivated by love, but use coercive tactics to foster an academically competitive spirit. Okay, so I was kind of right. This school friend Karen also described Jennifer's mother as just her dad's accomplice. So it really seemed like both the parents were really quite pushy on Jennifer at this time. Jennifer's parents picked her up from her classes every single day and they monitored her extracurricular classes really closely. They never allowed Jennifer to date any boys in high school. She wasn't allowed to attend dances or proms, which is kind of sad because the high school discos and the proms and stuff are some of my best memories from school. Jennifer's parents adopted this kind of strict parenting because they didn't want anything to distract Jennifer from her studies and her success. And this continued even through university. Jennifer wasn't allowed to attend any parties in university, which is crazy to me because I think I did more partying in university than I did studying. At the age of 22, Jennifer had never gone to a club, never been drunk, never even visited a friend's house or gone on holiday without her family. Jennifer and her friends recognised that this kind of parenting was really restrictive, and even though, you would like to believe that this kind of parenting comes out of love, Jennifer and her friends just regarded it as a sort of tyranny in her life, and it was really kind of frustrating for her. One of Jennifer's former classmates said they were absolutely controlling. They treated her for such a long time. So I guess that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what everybody around Jennifer also thought about the way that her parents treated her and regarded her sort of extracurricular activities. Despite Jennifer's parents' expectations that she would receive really high grades in school, throughout high school, Jennifer's grades were somewhat average. It said that she was gaining kind of 70% on average. I know the American grading system is different to the UK because 70% in the UK is the top grade. So I'm assuming if they're saying this is average, maybe this is a B. That one doesn't make much sense to me. But in order to sort of circumvent her parents' expectations and any punishment she might get for not performing her best, Jennifer decided to forge her academic cards. She used false templates to show her parents that she received straight A's when she really just had not. And Jennifer's parents really thought that she was a straight A student, when in truth she earned mostly B's. This is respectable for most people. A B is a good grade, don't get me wrong. I've got B's before and I've been very happy with it. But in this strict household, it was just not acceptable. So Jennifer just continued this practice and she just kept forging her academic cards and just lying to her parents. She received early acceptance to college, but then she actually failed her calculus class in her last year, and so she wasn't able to graduate. And because of this, her university withdrew their offer. And so Jennifer upgraded from just forging her academic cards to just completely lying to her parents. In order to stop them from digging and looking into her actual grades, Jennifer just didn't tell her parents, and she just told them that she started university in the fall. She said her plan was to do 2 years of science and then transfer over to U of T's pharmacology program. This was apparently sort of the program and the school that her father really wanted her to go to. So her father was delighted. He bought her a brand new laptop for school. Jennifer collected used biology and physics textbooks, and she also bought school supplies, so she was really going in on this lie. And when it came to tuition, she started faking papers again. She doctored papers stating that she was receiving an OSAP loan, and even convinced her dad that she'd won a $3,000 scholarship. She'd pack up her bag, she'd take public transport downtown, and her parents just assumed that she was headed to class. Instead, Jennifer would spend all of this time at public libraries, and she would just research on the web what she thought was sort of relevant scientific topics, and then she'd just write notes in her textbooks. She also spent some of her free time at cafes, or she would visit Daniel, her boyfriend, at York University where he was taking classes. She picked up a few day shifts as a server at Eastside Mario's in Markham. She taught piano lessons, and she later started some work as a bartender at Boston Pizza where Daniel worked as a kitchen manager. Quite often, Jennifer's dad would ask her about school, ask her about her studies and how things are going, and Jennifer's mum would just say to him, let her be herself and just leave her be. And I guess because they weren't interfering, they weren't asking questions, maybe that's why this lie kind of went on for so long. And in order to keep this lie going, Jennifer also lied to her friends. She amplified her dad's sort of strict parenting to make him sound worse. She even falsely told one of her friends that her dad had hired a private investigator to follow her around and see what she was doing, it was not true. After Jennifer had been at her university for 2 years, her dad asked her whether she was still planning to switch to U of T, and remember, this was the university that her dad really wanted her to go to. And she said yes. She said they'd already accepted her and she was planning to go. Her parents were obviously thrilled. They thought their daughter was thriving and they were happy for her. Along with the transfer of school, Jennifer suggested that maybe it'd be easier if she moved in with her friend Topaz downtown for 3 nights a week, because this was closer to the school that she wanted to go to. Even though Jennifer's parents were quite strict, her mum sympathised with her and her long commute, and she convinced her dad to agree to this. But this was a lie too. Jennifer never stayed with Topaz and she never planned to. Monday through Wednesday, Jennifer stayed with her boyfriend, Daniel, and they stayed in his family home. And Jennifer lied to Daniel's parents too. She told them her parents were completely okay with the arrangement, they knew everything about it, they said it was fine, and she repeatedly brushed off their requests to meet her parents. After 2 more years, it was kind of about the time that Jennifer should be graduating from U of T. So she did not give up on this lie. Jennifer and Daniel hired someone that they found online who could fake a transcript full of A's. And when it came to the graduation ceremony, Jennifer told her parents that her class was an extra large size and so there just wasn't enough seats. Because of this, graduating students were only allowed 1 ticket each, and she didn't want to sort of single out any parents, so she just decided that neither of them should go. And she gave a ticket to her friend. Obviously was a lie, there was no ticket. And so this lie has been going on for over 4 years. She's lied about her whole high school career, she's lied about 2 years at her first college, and then she even lied about transferring and completing the final 2 years at U of T. So when is this going to fall through? Does this ever end? Well, eventually Jennifer's fictional academic career did begin to collapse. Surprise, surprise. While supposedly studying at U of T, Jennifer told her parents about an exciting new development. She was volunteering at the blood testing lab at a place called Sick Kids. And this gig sometimes required late night shifts on Fridays and weekends. And because of this, she suggested that maybe she should spend more time staying with Topaz because it was closer. But Jennifer's dad started to think that something was feeling a little bit off. Jennifer was talking about this amazing opportunity, but she didn't have a uniform and she didn't have a key card, which you would think would be something required for like a medical testing site. So the next day he insisted that he drop Jennifer off at the hospital, and as soon as the car stopped, Jennifer ran inside and Jennifer's dad asked her mum to follow her. Jennifer realised she was being tailed by her mum, so she hid in the waiting area of the ER for a couple of hours until they left. Now at this point I think Jennifer's parents are starting to think something is really off. So the next morning they called Topaz and they asked her what the hell was going on. And so Topaz told them the truth. Jennifer wasn't there. Jennifer hadn't been staying with her. When Jennifer finally came home, her parents confronted her about her lies. She confessed that she wasn't volunteering at Sick Kids. She'd never been in U of T's pharmacology program, and she had been staying with her boyfriend. Although she actually forgot to tell them that she actually didn't graduate high school and that her time at her first college was also a lie. So they know half of the truth. They wanted to punish her. Obviously she had lied about so much and fabricated so much. They took away her phone and her laptop for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks she was only permitted to use these items while her parents were around, and she had to endure kind of surprise checks on what she was doing. They forbade her from seeing Daniel, and they ordered her to quit all of her jobs apart from teaching piano, and they began tracking the little monitor thing on the car that tells you how far you've traveled. What is that called? It's like a pedometer or something. That. Jennifer was furious. She was madly in love with Daniel and she was lonely without him. For 2 weeks she was housebound. She was by her mother's side almost constantly. And in February 2009 she wrote on her Facebook page, "Living in my house is like living under house arrest." She also posted a note, "No one person knows everything about me, and no two people put together knows everything about me. I like being a mystery." Over the spring and the summer, Jennifer snuck in calls with Daniel. She would whisper in the dark at night time so her parents couldn't hear her, which I think is kind of cute. But eventually, she was allowed a bit of freedom. And she enrolled in a calculus class to get her final credit so that she could finally graduate high school. But still, in defiance of her parents just that little bit, she proceeded to see Daniel in between her sort of piano lesson classes. But Daniel was kind of getting bored. She was 24, still sneaking around at this point, terrified of her parents and not willing to leave home. He told her to figure out her life or he was ending it. And Jennifer was heartbroken. She really, really loved Daniel, and she felt like she had gone through so much and risked so much to stay in contact with him and keep seeing him. But shortly after, Jennifer learned that there was another girl called Christine. And in true Jennifer fashion, in an attempt to get Daniel back, she concocted this story about Christine that she hoped would put him off her. She told Daniel that a man had knocked on her door and flashed what she thought could have been a police badge. When she opened the door, a group of men rushed in, overpowered her, and her in the foyer of her house. Then a few days later she said she received a bullet in an envelope in her mailbox. Both instances, she said, were warnings from Christine to leave Daniel alone. It's just crazy stuff to make up. In the spring of 2010, Jennifer reconnected with a friend from elementary school called Andrew. Jennifer says that Andrew was boasting to her about how he had been robbing people at knife point in the local park. And when Jennifer told him about her torturous relationship with her parents, Andrew apparently confessed that he had been thinking about killing his father. The idea kind of caught Jennifer's eye, and she began to think about this. She began thinking how much better her life would be without her father and how much more freedom she would have. Eventually, Andrew introduced Jennifer to his roommate, Ricardo, and they all hatched a plan. They planned for Ricardo to murder Jennifer's father in a parking lot at his work. Jennifer gave Ricardo $1,500 earnings from her piano lessons, and they agreed to connect later by phone to arrange the date, the time, and all the specific details of this hit. But Duncan stopped answering Jennifer's calls and got cold feet, I suppose. By early July, Jennifer realised that she'd been ripped off. Ricardo had just run off with her money. According to police, it was at this point that Jennifer and Daniel, who were back in contact and, flirting, decided to do something even more sinister. They'd hire a hit on Jennifer's parents, collect the estate. Jennifer's portion would total about $500,000, and then they'd live together without Jennifer's meddling parents. So Daniel gave Jennifer a spare iPhone and SIM card and connected her with a guy called Lenford Crawford. And Jennifer asked him, what's the going rate for a contract killing? Just everyday questions. Crawford said it was $20,000, but for a friend of Daniel's, he could do it for 10. What a nice guy. So on November 8 at 10:02 p.m, the light in the upstairs study in Jennifer's house switched on, and this was a signal. Crawford and two other guys walked through the front door, all carrying guns. One pointed his gun at Jennifer's father, another one ran upstairs and pointed his gun at Jennifer's mother. They directed them down the stairs and into the living room. Upstairs, one of the boys confronted Jennifer outside of her bedroom door, and so according to Jennifer's story of what happened, he tied her arms behind her with a shoelace, directed her back inside, where she handed over $2,500 approximately in cash, and then to her parents' bedroom, where he located another $1,100 in US funds in her mother's nightstand. And then finally they moved to the kitchen to search for her mother's wallet. After he had collected all the money, he led Jennifer back upstairs and tied her arms to the banister, while the other two men took Jennifer's parents downstairs into the basement, and they covered their heads with blankets. The men shot Jennifer's father twice, once in the shoulder and then in the face, and they shot Jennifer's mother 3 times in the head, killing her instantly. They then fled through the front door. Somehow, even though Jennifer's tied up to a banister, she managed to reach her phone, tucked into the waistband of her pants, and she called 911. Jennifer's father stumbled outside and he was screaming. He found a neighbour who was about to leave for work in the driveway next door. So the neighbour called 911 and the police and an ambulance arrived at the scene minutes later. York Regional Police interviewed Jennifer just before 3 a.m. She told them that the men had broken into the house looking for money, tied her to the banister, found her parents, took them into the basement and then shot them. And 2 days later, the police brought her back in to give a second statement. At their request, she showed how she had sort of contorted her body to get her phone, which was a flip phone, out of her waistband to place a call while she was also tied to the banister. And holes began to emerge in Jennifer's story. For instance, the keys to her dad's Lexus were in plain view by the front door. If it was a home invasion, why did the intruders not take the car? Why didn't they have a crowbar to get in? They just walked in. And they didn't have a backpack to carry anything that they stole. And they didn't have zip ties, to tie anybody up. They just seemed unprepared. Most importantly, why did they shoot 2 witnesses and leave Jennifer unharmed? So the police started to think something was up, and they assigned a surveillance team to follow Jennifer around. On November 12, Jennifer's father woke up from his coma. He had a broken bone near his eye, bullet fragments lodged in his face, and a shattered neck bone. But he remembered everything, including 2 major details. He recalled seeing his daughter chatting softly to the intruders like they were friends. He also said that her arms were not tied behind her back while she was walking around the house. So on November 22nd, the police brought Jennifer back in for a 3rd interview. This one developed a different tone. The detective said that he knew she was involved in the crime. He knew that she had lied to him and said it was in her best interest to just fess up. So Jennifer, in reaction, hunched over the table, sobbing, and just kept asking, But what happens to me? This girl has no remorse. Over nearly 4 hours, Jennifer spun this crazy explanation as to what had happened. She said that the attack had been an elaborate plan to commit suicide. She was the only one that was literally left unharmed. She said she'd given up on life, but she couldn't manage to kill herself, so she hired another guy to come in and do it for her. Essentially, to kill her. In September, however, her relationship with her father had greatly improved, and she decided to call off the hit on herself. But she says that somehow the wires got crossed and the men ended up killing her parents instead of her. Police were having none of this and they arrested Jennifer on the spot. And in the spring of 2011, relying on analysis of phone calls and texts, police also managed to arrest Daniel and the other 2 boys. They charged everybody involved with first-degree murder, attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Jennifer's trial began on March 19th, 2014. It was expected to last 6 months, but actually it stretched for almost 10. More than 50 witnesses testified and more than 200 exhibits were filed. Jennifer was on the stand for 7 days, bobbing and weaving to try and explain away these damning text messages and desperately trying to convince the jury that while she had ordered a hit 3 months later and still before the hit had taken place, she decided she didn't want it and she wanted nothing to do with it. The jury found Jennifer unsurprisingly guilty and she showed no emotion at this. But once the press left, she wept and she was shaking uncontrollably, so maybe she was just in shock. For the charge of first-degree murder, Jennifer received an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. For the attempted murder of her father, she received another sentence of life to be served concurrently. Everybody else involved in the planning of this, so the 3 guys and Daniel, Jennifer's boyfriend, all received the same sentence, and the judge granted non-communication orders, effectively preventing Jennifer from speaking to her brother and father ever again. Her lawyer addressed the order in court. He said Jennifer is open to communicating with her family if they want to. You know, I don't think they want to. Jennifer's father and her brother Felix both wrote victim impact statements about this case. Jennifer's father wrote, "I don't feel like I have a family anymore. Some say I should feel lucky to be alive, but I feel like I am dead too." He's now unable to work because of his injuries. He suffers anxiety attacks, insomnia, and when he can sleep, frequent nightmares. He is in constant pain and he's had to give up gardening, which was sort of a pastime, working on his cars and listening to music because he just says that they don't bring him joy anymore. He can't bear to be in his house, so he lives with relatives close by, and Felix just completely moved and he now lives in the East Coast. He suffers from depression and is apparently a really closed off person. Jennifer's father is desperate to sell the family home, but nobody wants it. I mean, there was a murder in there. At the end of his statement, Jennifer's father addressed her. He said, "I hope my daughter Jennifer thinks about what has happened to her family and can become a good, honest person someday." And that's all we have for this case. This case is just mental. I don't know about you, but sort of compulsive liars really kind of weird me out. You know, those people that just lie for no reason. Jennifer seems like this sort of person, and it's difficult because I kind of feel for her with the parenting styles and stuff, but I mean, a hit is not the way to handle that. The postman came and delivered me some goodies. Yee! And a number of questions linger for me. Was Jennifer mentally ill? Because a chemical imbalance in her brain would certainly make her reactions and, you know, her resolutions a lot easier to understand. But her lawyers didn't attempt to present her as mentally ill at all. They didn't go down the route of Jennifer being sort of mentally incompetent at trial. So that leaves an even harder conclusion for me, that Jennifer was actually completely in control of her actions, that she wanted her parents dead, and she put a plan into action to make this happen. For me, I think it was all of those years of lies coming out and the shame that drove her to do this. But Is it that simple? I mean, you have to assume that Jennifer loved her parents on some level. She was reportedly hysterical on the phone when she called 911, and she did tear up at the courthouse when describing the sounds of her parents being shot. But can you believe such an experienced liar? Jennifer consistently lied throughout her life, and she lied in all 3 statements that she gave to the police. She even gave half-truths under oath, which is like, you might as well just tell the truth now. A friend of Jennifer's said that she didn't think Jennifer was evil, just that she hated these particular people. And I think I agree. I think it was a culmination of the tiger parenting, the restrictive lifestyle that her parents had forged for her throughout her childhood and seeping into her adulthood, and her excessive need to consistently impress her parents and live up to their high expectations. And I think ultimately all of that just came to a head. I think it all became too much, and Jennifer saw this as her only way out. She needed to remove all of the cause of all of her stress in her life, and unfortunately, the root of all of this was her parents. Am I condoning it? Absolutely not. But do I kind of understand? Maybe? I think so. Please let me know what you guys think. Do you agree sort of with my conclusion, or do you think something else? It's totally okay not to agree with me. I encourage everybody to have their own thought, but please let me know what you think below. This case is so strange. If you like this type of true crime content, please like this video and subscribe. I am going to be uploading regularly, so watch out for that. I am filming this on Christmas Eve, so hopefully I'll be able to edit it and upload it for Christmas. So if I upload it before Christmas, happy Christmas Eve. If I upload it on Christmas, happy Christmas. And if I upload it after Christmas, I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. Okay, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye!